Dungeon Doom
Definitely not
Hands.
memorized.
Let's
Oh yeah,
talk lore. A
we're on.
podcast.
Welcome to Let's Talk Lore, another episode where we talk Dungeons and Dragons. Tonight we're going to be talking about Chris. What are we talking about?
We're talking about a session, just any regular session. How you prep, how you play. I really was curious to find out how you, Spencer, prep for our sessions of I got Doomhand and Skulls of Power. Like,
Um,
how much time do you spend? What's your focus?
okay,
What's your motivation when you go into your
so
prep?
as a DM, as like a beginner DM, I so over prepped it was crazy. But now I feel like I'm a little bit and in previous sessions we've talked about it. I'm a little bit more comfortable, I think. So what I do to prep is I that's a tough one. So I guess yeah, it's hard because like you are you going from the
Well,
start? Are you in the middle of the
let, let,
campaign?
let's just break it down and it doesn't have to be anything. Let's say
Yeah.
for a one shot.
All right. So I
What
usually
are the things that you try to prepare?
so I try to prepare at least a couple encounters. I have a puzzle. I like to have a puzzle, an encounter, and a trap. And the encounter doesn't have to be an NPC. It can be anything. And then I sort of go from there. Now, if we have a bad guy already set up, or we have a goal already set up, I sort of know where the guys are going. But let's just say we start from scratch. You're gonna have a hook, and you just sort of
Mm.
develop some. I've been using tables recently to sort of set up my sessions. So instead of like trying to sculpt the perfect uh, game, which I think is sort of railroading a little bit, and we can talk about that later on. I found that tables are actually a lot easier, more useful when it comes to the actual. I think with how Dungeon Dragons should be played. Uh, so yeah, I
The
have
roll of the dice.
I sort of kind of know what the players want to do with the sort of game hooks that I give out. Um, there's a dragon or the king needs help. Like this next session that we're going to do on Monday, the king is going to come. You guys have just ran into Lololo, and I have a table, and I'm going to tell you guys I'm going to be using a table. So it sort of builds suspense with the characters, so they or with the players. I found that tables, if you say you're going to use a table for certain particular decisions, and you roll it, or even if you give the table, I might give the table out to let them see.
Oh,
There's too many hooks. I could try it. Like here's a
I
hundred
think
here's a hundred
the
different.
randomness of the roll the die and then we find out what happens.
Yeah. So like I like that because they don't
Like telling us
know.
that there is a table, I think is enough randomness for us to be
Yes.
excited about whatever's to come.
And also like are you making the right decision? So I feel like, but to go back to the setting up as a DM, I think if you know your players and you are in the middle of a campaign, it's a little bit easier, obviously. But I would say tables. Like I used to sit there and try to like make this big lore drop and all this stuff. You could sit back and relax with your lore drops. They'll come at the right moment.
Yes.
I love the lore drop, you know me. But I don't. You don't have to overdo it. I used to overdo it, and it would sort of railroad it. But you guys are such good players that you kind of just bust through the railroad. But how do you?
Well, there are times when you would have some story elements that you wanted to put in front of us. So you would sort of find a way to get them in there.
Right.
Um, oh, I lost my question.
how did you as a player? So I was trying to figure out some questions to ask about prepping because like a lot of people think
Yeah.
it's just the DM that really preps this and the players do not. When in actuality, it's everyone. And I think if you're going to have a productive game where everyone sort of steps away from the game, saying, "Wow, that was crazy," I think that the players also should do their own sort of prepping. I'm not
Hmm.
really a player as often as I'd like to be. Eventually, I will be subbing in, and hopefully, wink, wink, we'll get a DM to do it for us. But how do you think, and how do you as a player prep?
Well, it depends on the type of game I'm playing. Like you're saying, depending on the game that you're doing, your prep is a little bit different. For
Right.
our game with Agoth Doomhand, and this is going to be a little reveal. The main reason why I wanted us to start recording when we first started recording our sessions is so I could go back and watch them as my prep for what was happening because we were playing every 2 weeks. So we have families, we have life, we have full-time jobs. So I don't always remember everything, and my notes aren't the greatest. Um, so I secretly wanted just to watch our sessions, and the way that I prep for our games is all while I'm working in the like couple days before the game. I'll go back and just listen to the whole game. I don't pick up on everything, um, but generally on like the I sort of wait till like the day before the day of the game, and my main prep is getting into a mindset of the character, of like stepping into the character itself.
So do you come up with like as a dungeon master, I say, okay, my goal is obviously to have a good time with my friends and the
Mhm.
players, and to try to lead like the best, most epic. I guess every session is sort of a one-off. But
Right.
as a player, do you have like things you do to prepare for that? Like, are you when you get into your character, like, or
Yeah. When I'm trying to get into the character, I often have a playlist of like music that gets me in the mindset of that character. I have one for every character that I'm actively playing. It's
what's
great.
your playlist? Side question, not on the topic. What's your playlist for Stag, the Bard here?
All right.
What's
I can pull up Tangent. Where did I put it?
Is this
Hold on.
the one that you keep Chris? So if you don't know, every time that Chris does a spell, he sings. I feel like we discussed that. And is this made up of those songs? Because that's
No,
hilarious.
no.
There's a lot of '90s in that. There's a lot of
No,
'90s.
there is a lot. Stag, you have deduced correctly. Stag, there is a lot of 90s.
There's a lot of
So
'90s in Stag.
so the first, I'll give you a couple on there. The first one on there is Getting Jiggy with It by Will Smith. Jump
Nice,
from Crisscross. There's some more modern stuff. I do have Children's Story by Slick Rick.
nice.
Big Pimpin' by Jay-Z.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you have to have that. That
Yeah.
one,
So I mean, Stag has his style,
that's
but
hilarious.
each character has their own style, and if
Yes.
I'm especially the day of, if I'm working or doing something or driving in the car, I'll have that playing. Um, but as I'm getting into the mindset, I'll go through sometime during the day, I'll go through my notes prior
Right.
of the prior session,
Notes are
just like
huge.
quickly read through them because I mean,
So,
for Stag, for that character, it feels like the stuff that I write down is important to him, not necessarily the whole story, but important to him or
so
to
I
that
had
character.
I had recently, I thought notes are good. A lot of people remember between the 4 or 5 people we now have. How many people do we have? Five that play. I feel like between everyone's recap and we can almost get the whole
Picture.
picture of what happened. So and I think because we do it every 2 weeks, I think that's a perfect amount of time.
Mhm.
It allows for because if you did it every week, that's a lot of prep. But it depends on how much time you have. Again, you said it's life
Mhm.
balance situation. So when
Yeah.
you're prepping, just with anything, I have I have an 11-hour job I do every day. Everyone has their own thing, and I have a
Yeah.
family. I like to work out and all that stuff. Um,
Well,
how much can you do? I think 2 weeks is a good amount of time to prep.
there's the amount of time I use to prep for our game is different from my weekly in-person game. So that one we play every week, and oftentimes will come up like the only time I really have to prep is the time from when I get in the car to driving to my friend's house.
Well,
And well,
yeah,
and during that time, that's when I started the playlists because I'll get in the car and I'll put on the playlist, and in that drive, it's like getting off of work, you take time for yourself of I'm getting prepared for the game, I'm getting into the mindset. And that game we do just like our game, we do a really detailed table review of the five players
the
there and the DM all getting the idea.
yes,
But if I have extra time for that game, often for our game, if I'm going through my notes beforehand and there's something that comes to mind, I will try and formulate some sort of goal of what is my character trying to do right now.
right.
I know when we brought Booter into our game, one of my questions is like, what's your near-term goal? And every session I play, I like to have what is my this session goal?
Right.
Like because it feels like it gives me a motivation to do something, not just sit back and have stuff happen around me, but actively engage in the story. Of like if nothing happens, all right, what am I gonna do here?
So
And I
what?
think that idea came from my West Marches game where it's entirely player driven. And like I sat down for a session one time and the DM was like, all right, what do you want to do today? I'm like, I have no idea. Give me 5 minutes. Then I freaked out, but in a moment I was like, oh yeah, there's all these plots and plans that my character has. And I like to have an idea of that, especially going into it, especially this like, all right, my goal right now, my goal is to try and sell all of Aranis's stuff so we can get money and get supplies. That's Stag's
Right.
goal for this next section on Monday.
So I think having a set goal. I mean, obviously you have to remember. Usually the goals don't, come to be some. I mean, it depends on what happens.
You can come into it with whatever mindset you have, and everyone knows when you come into a game, everything changes.
So I always we have a group chat, the DM and the players, and sometimes the players will go off on their own and have their own group chat, especially with that Kraken. It was hilarious.
That was one time. That's the only time we've had our own private chat.
But I just love that idea, and I just think that, and I'm assuming that during large fights, like when you finally face Doomhand again, you might have another strategy session. But when you prep as a DM, I guess, and as a player, obviously read your notes. But there have been times, just like you. I know I said that we had 2 weeks, but life happens, and I went on vacation, or I just got bogged down with the grind, and I didn't have anything prepped, and I like to communicate, so I always tell people, oh boy, I don't have that much prep tonight. But sometimes those sessions end up being unbelievable. The session right after the wall dungeon, so the characters were on a boat and they crashed into the wall, like in the Truman Show, and the door opened up and you went inside and it turned out to be like a mind flare lair. And you guys, someone Sprock got Sarah morphed, and you went back on the boat. Like, the only thing I had prepped for that was like researching how to Sarah morph a person. That was it. Like, I didn't know anything. I didn't know where you guys were going, what you guys wanted to do, because time was of the essence. And it turned out to be great. And I just think that, like, sometimes having a table is the most reliable, and you can always fall back on that. So like when I did the desert, when I did the Artemisian Forest, and when I did the ocean, I didn't really do this much in the Underdark, because I thought the Underdark was a little bit better if it was like a little bit more random. I always have sort of a map. I draw out a little bit of a map, like an area map, and then I have about 10 things that could come up that are cool, and sometimes not cool. Sometimes just blank, and sometimes those are the best parts where, like, the characters get into this new area and it's just the wind, or they smell something, or it's really not that great of an encounter, but it just sort of brings the players in. I have a map, and I've sort of mapped out kind of what should happen in there. And then depending on where you guys go, I have a roll. So, all right, now you run into the sentient whale Whiplow, who was in the water. Or I had a random one where it was so random, like you guys get on the boat for the first time and you guys set sail, and we just spent like 30 minutes talking about sailing rules and stuff like that, which was like cool and like, but I guess the sailing rules weren't really like, we didn't really use them that much, but like it was cool to like have a captain and a cook and all that stuff, and people had pluses or minuses depending on that. But like one of the first rolls I had was a
It came
Pixies.
into hand. Lone Star had an amazing dockage.
It's true. Docking, yeah. But like, if you have, we ran into some Pixies, and I just had to make up a whole bunch of stuff. And it turns out I jotted that down, during the session. If you take your notes, now I know that at some point there's a Pixie story or a Pixie hook that we can go to. So like I feel like these random tables are really good, not just for the planning of your world, but they can open it up a little bit as well, because of just the sheer randomness. I think the more the merrier.
It expands your world building in places that you wouldn't normally have taken it.
Yeah, and also like I steal stuff. Like I go online and I printed out 3 lists of 100 random city events, and those are all random. I have absolutely, I know if you've if the viewers have seen the other stuff on YouTube, they can see that we have a digital game style, but I'm slowly taking it back from like setting up the whole thing to I want to be able to do all of those roles, and I think or all those encounters, and like I have there's 300 random cities, and this is a huge metropolis. It's like the D&D New York City on acid. There's flying boats, there's blimps, there's everything that you could imagine there. And I just think that like the last session was really cool, how that sort of, my idea was, okay, you're going to walk down the city street, and I know from walking in the city street, you can have many different encounters on one city block. But, so in one area, you can have multiple encounters. It's just nice to have that set up. And if it doesn't go well, and like, let's just say you botch an encounter, maybe the characters didn't like it, or maybe you screwed up the hook or whatever. Just move on to the next encounter. Like you don't have to get bogged down in moving it forward. Yeah. So like the over preparing, like if you're so set on this one encounter to really open up things, and the characters decide, you know what? Let's go back. Yeah, like then you think to yourself that whole session's wasted. But really, if you have another encounter set up, then you know what? You guys are going to go do that? Well, let's roll for it. Let's see what happens, and that sort of allows you to be a little less.
Question is how do you deal with the curveball that during a session, I mean, you do all of your prep, you set up these encounters, you have the great tip of you have your table, so you have a lot of different options that can happen. But how do you handle the curveball in the middle of a session of, oh, we're actually going to go to this completely other place, or we're going to kill this main NPC that you had this whole backstory for?
The first thing I do is I laugh with everyone, and I explain to them what just happened. And usually that buys me enough time of laughing to figure out what what to do. Like when you guys were in the desert and I had this whole backstory, you guys were going to follow this guy Zorg, and I was finally going to be a player, and I was going to be able to like actually participate in the thing. And then Aranis just backstabs him and steals his magic carpet, and he's like, "All right, now we can travel around this desert easily with his magic carpet." I was like, "Shit." Let me quickly Google magic carpet D&D rules. You just have to sort of go. I mean, go with it is such a like loose answer, like a lame answer, but a curveball. I mean, use your encounter. If you need to figure out like in the real time game situation, and if you have something that doesn't go your way, and the characters want to go do something completely different, you cannot as a DM say no. You can't do that. I just wouldn't ever do that unless it was like ridiculous.
It's something absurd, yeah.
Yeah,
There,
but
no exists as a DM, but only in those rare cases
right.
of like no, but let's
Yeah.
figure something else out
And
that works.
if you're like 30 minutes or 45 minutes and maybe an hour into your like 2-hour, 3-hour session, just roll one of those encounters that you had. Give yourself enough time to figure out
where
how
you're
to
going.
exactly.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
yeah, just like your metaphor, you got to wait on the pitch to see where it's moving to, and then you take your step and swing into it.
right. And because if you have everything set up, it's not going to be it's going to be you telling a story. And I listened to some guy, I don't know his name. Hopefully he'll forgive me if he ever watches us. But he's on the, I think it's the DM Layer. I think that's his YouTube. And he said, I watch this stuff. He's pretty good, very helpful in certain situations, and in a lot of tips. And I was viewing him, and he said one, obviously never say. I mean, you can say no, but it's within that time frame. But when you're like on the spot like that, I just feel like his advice was, you can also lean on the players.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you want to do? Okay, so you're going through the woods or whatever. Now you guys see a stream. Now you're going to follow the stream. Okay, well, that wasn't something I had planned. Now you have to develop a whole thing with the stream. The stream leads to the river, waterfall, all this stuff. And that it's really a world building experience for you too. It's not like you're not the only one that's lost. Like the players are lost. You are now in there lost with them. It's a pretty good experience all around. One question I wanted to ask you about what prepping was, and this was one of the ones I thought I had sent you. When you sit down for a game, what are your expectations from the DM? You don't have to.
Well,
I know I'm your DM, so you won't die if you say so. If you criticize. I like constructive criticism.
So every time I come to a game, the expectation I have for the DM is the same I have for any other player at the table and myself, is we're coming together to tell a story, to have fun. Like I don't have any expectations that they're going to do this crazy thing or have everything set up. Because every session the DM is sort of like the god of the world, but the session can be guided by all the players, by anyone else at the table. So I don't expect the DM to be there and say, all right, you're here, you're going to do this, or blah, 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 blah. It's like the curveball. It's like we follow the river. All right, where are you going on the river? What are you doing on the river? All right, this is what we're doing. This is where we're going. This is what the encounters that were there. So I think my only expectation is for the DM to be engaged with us as the players in the story as much as we are with them.
Right. And I think that
so there's no like you have to have this many combat encounters planned. We have to have everything organized and controlled, so no matter what we do, you have the answer for us right away. When I DM, there's been many times when I said, you know what, I need a minute to think about this, so you guys RP a little bit or figure out what you
Yeah,
guys are gonna do next. Let me figure out what the hell's going on,
I
and then
love
we'll
that
come back to it.
during the game. Sometimes and I don't think I do this on purpose, like I'm like a master DM, like okay, I'm gonna take advantage of you guys, but I love it sometimes when I'm like, all right, this is sort of like you guys can role play here a little bit. That's like AKA I need to look through some stuff. Okay? I need a break. You
Well,
know?
I think the thing that happens a lot of the time is there's always like one thing to the next, and having that little bit of
Yeah.
pause in the action for story to come out, for player interaction to come out is always, as a player, I always love to do that. Have those moments. That's when those backstory elements can be revealed, or a disagreement with another player can really come up and not affect the rest of the story that's happening. If you can have that moment with the other player of making amends or
Right.
calling them out on their bullshit.
Or like
Or
yeah.
saying, Matt, stop killing everyone.
Yeah, or like yeah, when I had that statue, I stole this statue puzzle. I didn't quite run it as well as I could have. I should have read it, but I just didn't know where I couldn't find it. So I just improved it, but the statue was like guarding this whole the exit, and he was like it was said something like the heroes' names that are written on the stone.
Only the heroes can
Only the
pass.
heroes can pass, and
Those
there's a
known.
stone.
The
There's a
heroes
stone.
known can pass.
Yeah, and then there's a stone that has heroes written on it, but there's nothing else written on it. And so Booter figured out like, okay, I have to write our names on this thing. And it was really funny when your character's backstory came out a little bit, and because Stag wasn't really your
Name.
your given name, and so you had to sort of explain that. Give me enough time to figure out what to do on the outside of that on the other side. But I think another thing to to bring it back to the topic that we're talking about, which is prepping for a session. So we have, as a DM, I could do a little review for a DM. I just think a map is really good set up. And when I say map, like a zoomed out map, not
general map of your region.
Here's the castle, here's the witch's tower, and here's the guys, and there's a forest in between. And what does that mean? That means that you need, and what's around the forest? Is there a lake? Okay, so you need 10 encounters for a lake, you need 10 encounters for a forest, and you need you don't need all the encounters, but that would be probably a good set for the session if you're going to be traveling to one of the two options. Now you have your map and you have your thing, and that's pretty much I mean, that's not it, but that's pretty much like the basics. And I think you could have a good session based on that. I like to have goals that I've given you. So I like our group because I give you guys goals. You have to find these 6 skulls, and somehow we're going to put them together. I have no idea exactly what that's going to be like, which was going to be sick. And to in order to fight this Doomhand guy. So that's the overarching theme or story arc. But how you get there, if you guys ever do get there, we're on session 70 maybe this week.
We have 3 skulls. We're going to get there.
Yeah. I just... but your individual player character goals and the actual player, you, Chris, are things that the DM needs to also understand. And one of the things that I like to do every other session or every session or every so often is ask individual players, what is it that you want? Do you, as a person, as a player of D&D, not your orc made up character, but you, Chris, do you need something more, or do you need something more out of it? Role play. I think Booterbot likes role play. Like I've noticed, and I gave him a cool point for not killing my NPC, which was nice. He was like, Matt, whoa, NPC killer, hold back, Aaron
See,
wants to find weapons. I don't.
yeah.
So
No one listens to me anymore when I say stop killing people.
yeah, but then you kill. But not lately. Not lately.
Yeah. Well, not Stag. Lone Star was a different story.
Yeah. And what about player? Like, I feel like,
Well,
I mean,
I think what you were just talking about is a very important aspect of prep as a player, that communication back and forth with the DM of looking, trying to figure out we're what we're trying to get out of playing the game, what our expectations of the game. And a lot of this comes out in our session zero, but it can change throughout the game of like what kind of story are you wanting to tell? And then if you go into the player a little bit of those personal player goals, having the conversation back and forth with the DM can really bring a lot of that to life. When I was DMing Dragon of the Icefire Peak, had one character who was a warlock, so the fun whole I get to be a patron now action. And before every session, they had probably 3 or 4 things that they were working on with their for their patron's goal, and it was just all right, here's what I'm thinking for this, of just giving me ideas and inspiration for the story, the idea, the theme that they had in mind for their character.
yeah,
It was just something that I could run with. And as a player, if I have idea or an inspiration like that, um, like with Lone Star and his family and a lot of his backstory, that was a lot of stuff that was communicated between you and I of like, all right, what's going on? Here's my idea about Lone Star's backstory. This is like the whole thing with Valley's family that Lone Star was trying to steal.
yeah. It's
That all came up with a communication between you and I of like, this is my idea for him. Run with it.
I don't want to sound like uh, I guess. Oh, I'm going to sound like it. Communication, communication, communication.
Hmm.
I feel like sometimes when you're setting up your sessions, even as a DM, like I take notes, I write everything down. Yeah, I write them down fast and everything, but sometimes, listen, I forget things. Um, and when you have your characters, and I don't think every game has our type of. I think we have a very good group. So props to that. Cool point for you, Chris. But
I'm gonna take it. I'm adding it
yeah.
for next session.
I just think that like uh, every now and then, the character will say, "Well, what about this or what about that?" And I just think that like you don't have to seal up your when you're moving forward through this huge epic story that you're trying to tell, even if it's just a one-off. Hopefully, the goal of the DM, in my opinion, is to have an exciting enough game that people want to play the next session. That is the ultimate
Yeah.
goal. Um, so how do you do that? Well, you have to leave a little crumb here, a little bread there, maybe a massive stake of a story hook
Yeah.
to come back to, and just you got to remember. You got to remember what those hooks are. I recently sat down and I was like, okay, I just went through my first huge notebook of DM notes for our Agoth Doomhand and the Skulls of Power, and I was like, haha, the first one's down. Like, book 1 is done.
Yeah.
And then I got a massive, huge blank one, and I was like, you know what? I am now going to go through, as I was organizing all the videos to post on YouTube, because that's when we started to do this. I'm going to post every story hook that we have. And you know what? There's a lot of cool stuff. So, like, if you go back in the water, or you go back to the desert, or you go back wherever, I already have something set up. So you don't have to start from scratch from those areas.
Yeah. Well, no prep that you do in a game for a campaign is wasted.
No,
It's
none.
just something that you can use later.
Yeah,
It's all the prep that you do is just filling out your like you're using your tables, just filling out your playbook that you get to use. And if people take that tangent, go completely somewhere else, yeah, just like what you're doing,
right.
store it, save it for later. They come back, you have all this other stuff there.
It's sick. I think that like the prepping is so funny. At the very beginning, as like the first couple times I was doing it, actually for the first like I'd say month or two that I was doing it, which is only 6 sessions. I really did not know exactly what I was doing, but you know what I did? I made it easy for me, and I just confined it to a small. I said this before in a previous Let's Talk Lore. If you're having an issue DMing or like you're new to it or whatever, start small. Start small.
Mhm.
Have your 10
Yeah.
encounters set up. Even if you don't know exactly how the encounter is going to go or whatever, how do you even run them? But like confine the players to a small dungeon room and go. Like you
Yeah.
don't have to, don't open it up to a huge world and then be like confused as to why you're overwhelmed.
Putting people in a dungeon is not railroading them.
No,
A dungeon is gonna have a path that goes through it.
railroading
But
would
what
be like
happens?
you're going to go to the Minotaur place and you're going to talk to this guy, and this guy's going to tell you this is where the key is, and you're going to go to that key. You know, it's just
Well,
not.
the railroading, the way I like to think about it is you're in a video game and you keep trying to go to all these other places, and they're like, no, sorry, this door is locked for now. This door
Yes.
is locked for now. This door is locked for now. The only door you can go to is that one at the end of the hall. And then so you go, oh,
You
fine, I'm gonna go at the end of the hall.
you railroaded me one game, but that's because I just
Oh,
know I know that like all I wanted to do was like go role play. Listen, I love role playing. I was gonna go over and do your thing. Hey, how you doing? You know, and you were like this huge guy takes your arm and sort of pushes you down easily into your chair, and you acknowledge that he's really strong. And I was like, does he now? You know, and I was like, okay, Chris, all right, let it rip, baby. And sometimes as a player, I feel like you have to just like don't. I understand everyone wants to break rules and they want to break the game and all that stuff, but like you got to give a little bit of a little bit of rope too. You got to your players need a little bit of rope and the DM needs a little bit of rope. Don't
oh,
just
absolutely.
if he's railroading you, it's probably because he's stuck.
And he
And
just wants to get you guys at a place where
it can
he
open.
can let you be free. Yeah.
Right.
It's
So
like let me finish this 2 minutes of what I'm trying to say. And I know
yeah.
I've done it as a player to you of like trying to jump in and do all this stuff, and you're like, let me finish what I'm saying. Let this whole scene, just like last session, I was excited to enter Trigar and explore it. And I was like, there's a couple times my mic was muted, and I was happy that I wasn't interrupting the story that was happening.
So funny. Last time was everyone. So if you guys didn't view, you can join us on Monday night for the Metropolis, which I think is running very smoothly. We've only been there for
Yeah.
one session, but it's about to open up in a massive way because they rolled an 8 on our table, and King Lolo has shown up, bearing his multiple game hooks. But everyone, when we got there, everyone went invisible. So guess what invisible people can't do? They can't role play. So it all kind of like had Booterbot get in there and do it for him, which was hilarious.
That's not entirely true. I think Sprock
It's,
roleplayed the shit out of his character.
yeah, it's actually, you know what? Cool point for Sprock, but he's not. If he views this, cool point for Sprock. He murdered someone, but I set that up for him. Set that up nicely.
Yep, you did.
Nicely. That was so good. All right, so let's summarize. Yeah, let's summarize this.
Well, I was gonna say that we've talked about all of these ways that we like to prepare. So what are 3 tips that you would give a DM
Um,
about preparing for a session?
so don't.
It doesn't have to be concise. It can just be
Yeah.
things or ideas.
Okay. Communication. What are your players' goals? Because if you want your players to come back, letting them struggle but reach those goals is ultimately how to have that good experience, and take that however you want. It could be any type of goal. 2, your prepping does not need to be an epic story. This is what the layer, to bring back to the layer DM, the DM layer, dungeon layer, I think is what it is. He said that if you want to tell an epic story, just go write a book. So we're not writing a book here. We're playing a game.
Yeah.
So you don't need to let the players help develop that. But when it comes to prepping there, just know that you don't have to have all this lore drop. It doesn't have to be like an episode or a movie, Lord of the Rings or a Game of Thrones episode. Just let it go. And don't be so confined. And the last one, and here's the biggest one, is tables will get you out of almost any situation that you are overwhelmed with. Oh my God, they killed this guy. Oh, this happened. You know what? I have a table, Chris. It's called the weather table. And guess what happens when you kill an NPC that I didn't want you to kill? There's going to be a big storm of knives coming down. Like the good old-fashioned knife storm. I stole that. I stole that. So like you can, it's just a perfect example. Something happens and the guys decide to go another way. You know what? As a DM, you have to let them go that other way. But I forgot who says that. Yes, but a big cloud comes in and it starts hailing. And when you look up, you do a quick perception check, you realize the hail isn't hail, it's knives. Now you have a cool 30 minutes to figure out what the hell you're going to do. So like that's my thing. Don't tell the story, let the players help you tell the story. Get your tables, and you don't have to have everything prepped. What would you say your three suggestions are for a recommendation? Yeah, tips for players.
So I think the first one is one we talked about, is figure out your short-term goal. What are you trying to accomplish in the next, say, 2 to 3 hours with your character? Take the time. The second one, take the time to understand, to get into your character. You don't have to do the voice. You don't have to do anything, but understand all of the stuff, all of the prep you did in your character sheet, all those ideals, bonds, flaws, all that. Give yourself a refresh of what your character's life means to it. Like for me, like a playlist, and another thing I love to do of getting into character is go through my character's inventory.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Because I always find random stuff that I forgot about, and oftentimes I'll find things I need. And going through my inventory, one of my favorite things to do if I'm trying to find that goal or motivation or figure something out, go through my inventory. And in D&D Beyond, they, especially on the app, they have a list of equipment. And I'll just scroll through the equipment of like, what can my character use here? What is something that could be exciting that my character could use and do something with? So even if I don't get it, or I'm not going to be at a shop where I can buy it, it's just something that I can think about of, oh, rope can be helpful. Or maybe a cart or a wagon. What can I do with a cart or a wagon? Oh, can we find one? So I love just going through inventory, going through this equipment of options and possibilities of ways to interact with the world.
And like your notes, I forgot we didn't mention notes at all this time, but
no.
Was that so?
I think, well,
yeah.
For I think those would be more than anything, more than even looking back at my notes, of try and understand your character, find out what their goal is, and absolutely check your inventory.
Yeah, execute.
How many times have you been scrolling through your inventory and find this one random thing of like, I have no idea what this is.
Oh my God.
When did I get this? I got this 2 years ago.
Dude, I used to over prep so much. I used to go through your inventory for you. Aaron and Sprock has like Sprock has been playing for 60, 70 sessions. That's 7 times at least a minimum of 2.5 hours. That's so many hours. He's definitely accumulated more inventory than he has at all. And I specifically set up encounters for those specific items to, one, get lost, and like two, to use. And no one ever picks up on the fact that those, I'm like, there is a Wonder Wand like a guy holding it says Wonder Wand statue. It's a guy with a open hand. Like, this is an example where you put your Wonder Wand in and something happens. And like, obviously you're not going to get that Wonder Wand back, but like, no one ever picks up on it. Or like the little mushroom things that like came out in the forest. It's funny. But yeah, bringing things full circle, you don't have to worry about, because you just move on. It'll eventually come full circle. I don't think you have to worry about that. But as a DM, communicate. And I think as a player, you also communicate.
Absolutely.
And I think that showing up prepared for a session means that you're ready to be engaged, and you're ready to have fun, and not necessarily confined to a strict story. And that was my genuine, that's my recommendation. And that, I guess, sums up our topic on how to prep. I know that we're going to be talking about that again. It's at some point soon. But that'll do, Chris. Again, I'm Spencer, and this is Chris. There you are. This is Let's Talk Lore, the podcast where we discuss things Dungeons and Dragons. Hit subscribe if you haven't. Roll high and subscribe. Stay tuned real quick. We're going to create our NPC, which, speaking of random, like, I have absolutely no idea who that's going to be. So that should be pretty good.
And don't forget to join us this next Monday at 7:30 or so.
Yeah.
For next episode of Agoth Doomhand and Skulls of Power.
Yeah. You want to know how to run a massive city? Learn with me, because I have no idea either, really. But I got some tables. Plenty of tables.